Hello. Welcome to a review of Thor, Love and Thunder. I don't know why I did that. I wanted to create a funny thumbnail moment. The thumbnail for Thor Ragnarok has me going like this, and I don't know why I did that, but it makes me laugh every time I see it. The thumbnail for my Thor Ragnarok review, that is. Card in the corner. If you've seen my review for that movie, you'll know I was not, a lot of my friends, and I think a lot of Marvel fans really like Thor Ragnarok. I thought Thor Ragnarok was good. It was better than the first two Thor movies, but I wasn't necessarily a fan of just making Thor Guardians of the Galaxy. And now with Thor Love and Thunder, there's even more conflict in my brain of what they're doing with Thor. It's a shame. I really liked Thor Love and Thunder. You know what? Let's start positive and then we'll kind of go negative. I actually really never have I, well, maybe not never, but just say this. Going in, sitting down, watching that movie, I was having a good time. A very good time, actually. I loved the gore stuff. The opening with Christian Bale's gore is striking, one of the more visually interesting openings to a Marvel movie. And the stuff with Natalie Portman's character, Jane Foster, is really good too. They actually give her something to do versus Thor 1 and 2, which just reminds you how good an actress Natalie Portman is. So Natalie Portman and Christian Bale are, bringing their A game. And they're a lot of the emotional through line of the movie, which is good because Thor himself is not the emotional through line of the movie. He's he's a joke man, and I thought this movie was funny. The humor is different. It's weird. It's interesting because I've seen a lot of people, and even some people I was with, who were not finding it funny. And I think the difference is that the humor is very silly, but not silly in a Guardians Thor Ragnarok way. More silly in a way that is kind of juvenile. No, I wasn't bothered by this sort of throw it to the wall juvenile humor style, but I can understand my friend was describing the humor as lol random, and I don't quite think that applies outside of one particular joke that they kept using throughout the movie. Screaming goats say what? But I was laughing. I was laughing throughout it. I wasn't getting hard belly laughs, but I feel like I was laughing more than I did for Thor Ragnarok, and I came out with a more positive opinion than I had on Thor Ragnarok. So that's my hot take, I guess, is that I enjoyed Love and Thunder more than Thor Ragnarok. I say it's a hot take because judging from the review sphere, I don't think people agree with me. This is one of those weird cases where I was really excited for a movie. I watched some reviews. The reviews tempered my expectations, and then maybe the movie exceeded my expectations a little bit. But I also think I just went in really wanting to like it. And maybe I went into Thor Ragnarok wanting to not like it. I was kind of in a Marvel fatigue spot when that movie came out. But this one, I really went in wanting to really like it. And So I latched onto the stuff that I liked, which was Christian Bale as Gore, Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, getting these. She gets the powers of Thor, but she also has cancer, so there's a very serious storyline going on there, and I don't think that storyline, either for her or for Gore, is undercut with humor. I think the humor largely stays in its place. I just think the general tone of the movie is kind of fluffy and fun, even in scenes with her. And I think it's just a tonally weird movie. The opening scene with Gore is pretty much tonally straight, tonally serious, dramatic. And then he runs into his god, and his god has a very different. His god figure that he's begging to save my daughter, where's my eternal reward? Dude, dude is much more you see him and you immediately go, okay, that's a Marvel movie character because his CG looks bad. Like that's the main issue, I think, more than anything that character says or does, is just that, like, it's like this very serious scene with Christian Bale and his serious makeup, like grieving his daughter, and then big Marvel CGI god that he's talking to, and there's a weird tonal contrast between the movie that in that scene didn't bother me because it was mostly just the bad CGI is what was bothering me. And for me, the tonal contrast was not too much. Like, I like stuff with kind of a, like, fluffy, juvenile, like, dumb, fun sense of humor, but, like, an emotional heart and an earnestness at its core, and I feel like this movie has that. It's dumb fun. It's the silliest Marvel movie ever made. Not the funniest. Some jokes do fall flat, and in fact, the jokes that fall flat really fall flat, and so I understand if the jokes that fall flat sour the whole experience for some people. But for me, I was like, the emotional core of the movie, and I think Taika Waititi does this well, of like silly, goofy tone with a strong emotional core, and I was more invested in the emotional journey of this movie, including Thor's emotional journey, than I was with, like, the Ragnarok emotional journey, at least when I watched that movie. Maybe if I rewatch that movie now. There's a weird thing. I guess we'll get into the kind of negative. Because you can tell I'm struggling to talk about Thor Love and Thunder in unequivocally positive terms, and that's because there was always... the pacing of the movie is off. Thor Ragnarok has a problem where I think that movie's too long and slumps in the middle. This movie has a problem where it's too short and rushes through some dramatic beats too fast. Like when Thor finds out that Gore the God Butcher is out there, because Sif tells him, that's such a rushed scene that is like 2 seconds long. And I'm like, I wanted more out of that scene. I wanted more out of that set piece. That big giant beast in the trailer. The dead beast in the trailer. I wanted more out of the scene I wanted more out of that. I wanted more out of Gore, too, although I don't think he was... I'm not sure how much more you could have done with Gore in this movie. He had about as much screen time with Thor as you could feasibly have given him, but I would have liked to see him on his own a little more, and apparently there are some cut scenes with him and some other actors from previous movies that I think there is a cut of this movie out there, or a script draft of this movie out there, that is better than the one we got, because certain story beats are rushed through, scenes were clearly cut, which would have made Gore even better, and instead, like, I mentioned screaming goats earlier. My friend was freaking out about this, and it's completely valid. They cut all these cool gore scenes with Peter Dinklage and Jeff Goldblum's characters, but they kept the screaming goats bit that reoccurred throughout the movie. They kept that. Like, there's some weird choices here where they really, like, they didn't want to cut... It has that weird, like, almost, like, It has the weird... And this is going to be the harshest thing I'm going to say about the comedy right here. It has that Will Ferrell comedy vibe of not knowing when to cut the scene and letting the joke continue for too long. And I think that's the reason I don't really like Will Ferrell comedies. For some reason, it didn't bother me too much in this movie, but it was definitely something I noticed, especially when the jokes... I think it didn't bother me in this movie because I liked most of the jokes, and if I like a joke, I have a pretty long runtime on, like, how much of the joke I can get before I'm tired of it. But when a joke fell flat, I really noticed how long they were willing to just let the joke pad out. And in a movie that is one of the shortest Marvel movies in a long time, I think you could have had it be relatively the same length if you just cut back on some of this joke stuff and included more of these cut scenes, or spent longer on some of these rushed plot beats. And I think that version of the script, whether it's the editing room or the writer's room that kind of pushed that away to focus on the comedy, I think that version of the script would have been probably one of my favorite Marvel movies. Like Guardians 1, not Guardians, probably like Guardians 2 tier. But instead, we've got a movie that left me feeling very confused at the end. I really liked it overall. So I'm less conflicted on it than a lot of people I've heard from. But I can't unequivocally say it was like a great time, because it just had, when stuff fell flat or felt rushed, it really fell flat or felt rushed. The pacing, it's weird. Between this and Doctor Strange, I'm starting to worry. Between this and Doctor Strange, I'm feeling Marvel right now. The thing that Marvel is struggling the most with is scripts that have weight. Like, the scripting of both of those movies, they had dramatic moments that were really good, and dramatic arcs of certain characters that were really good, but both movies lack a weight for the main character. I feel like their side characters and villains are allowed to be really interesting, but the main character kind of goes on this ho-hum, kind of gets their arcs sabotaged sometimes by, like, I guess the need to portray these characters as, like, fun heroes. I don't know what it is, but I know that the scripting is weird in both of these movies, and the scripting and pacing is the worst part of both of them. It's like, it seems like Marvel is letting their directors have more creative control. Taika Waititi for this one, Sam Raimi for that one. But in doing so, it's almost like the increased creative control for the directors makes the Marvel writers' lack of creative vision. I don't want to say lack of creative vision, because there is a vision there, but it just makes the like lesser Marvel elements stand out a little more when there's a strong director's vision. And for me, I didn't have issues with, like, I don't know how much of the weirdness of this movie is Taika and how much is the studio. Like, I can't tell. I just know that, I don't know, I think I really vibe with this movie, funnily enough. But I also think I might enjoy Ragnarok more on a rewatch than I would this one on a rewatch, just because this movie is very fluffy. I do feel like I'm kind of already forgetting it, even though I watched it. And this is like the soonest I've gotten a Marvel movie review out after a Marvel movie has come out. And I think that's because I do think, like, I'm about to go on a week-long trip. I think if I come back from this week-long trip and then review the movie, I honestly, there's a possibility I'll have forgotten a decent amount of it. Like, my opinion of it is more likely to go down than it is to go up, and I hate to have to say that about a movie. I like to say that I'm going to like a movie more the more I think about it, but usually with Marvel stuff, I like it the most when I'm walking out of the theater. I think that's a common sentiment for, like, Marvel stuff. You like it the most when you're watching it. So I am worried that this one is just going to kind of leave a lingering, like, Doctor Strange, I can at least hold solid in the opinion that, like, some of the sequences in that movie are just fun. But this movie, I'm wondering how much the fun factor is going to last in my brain. But we'll see, I guess. Thor: Love and Thunder. If you've been looking forward to it, I guess just do what I did when I read the reviews and, like, temper your expectations a bit. But I think if you liked the Taika Waititi style, you're probably going to like it. If you like some of his more, like, I don't want to say absurdist isn't quite the right word, but just sort of like irreverent. If you like some of his more irreverent, silly movies, you'll probably like this. Maybe more than Thor Ragnarok. Like, I don't know, maybe. But yeah, I don't know, weird movie. Kind of hard to talk about. And it's interesting how these Marvel movies are sort of the Marvel movies of this year so far have sort of had this weird, like none of them are are certain hits yet. It's a little concerning for the future of the MCU. Not that I should care that much about the future of the MCU, but I mean, I have been keeping up with the stuff. I'm watching Miss Marvel, which I don't know if anybody else is still watching Miss Marvel, but I'll review that when it ends, I guess. Anyway, arrivederci!